Perfect. Let's see here. Hold on. Sign in. Perfect. Hello, beautiful, amazing people. How is everybody? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Perfect,
Yes.
perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me tonight. So tonight I have a beautiful webinar planned for you guys today where I'm going to be teaching you guys how to build wealth utilizing a trust, okay? So we are going to dive right in. I'm going to share my screens. I have some slides prepared for you. And we're going to go through, we're going to go through the webinar. So it's going to be about an hour. And then after that, I will take any questions that you guys might have. Okay. So let's get started. Let me see. Perfect. All right, perfect. I don't know why I can't see myself, but that's okay. So this is the Wealthy Trustee webinar, and I'm going to teach you the right way to build wealth. I am Christina Yvette, so I am your instructor for tonight. So this is me, and I'm a passive income strategist. I have been a trustee since 2015, and the way I got involved in that is I was actually a registered nurse. And I was working, 6 days a week away from my son that he was only 1 year old. And so I told myself that I needed another stream of income so I didn't have to work so much. And so I ended up creating a real estate investment company, and I got a mentor, and my mentor told me that I had to, I was actually acquiring my first property. It was a little abandoned 2-bedroom house for $89,000. And he told me that I had to put this house in a trust. And so at that point in time, I was 25 years old. I saved up $25,000 as a nurse, and that's all that I had. And so I decided to open up the trust. And I put the house into the trust because I did not want to be taken advantage of. Being a young woman in the real estate industry is risky. And let's just be honest, it's like male dominated. So, as well as it being risky, I didn't want any subcontractors to like step on a nail or the roof to cave in on them. So I had to protect me and my assets and my growing wealth. And that's why I ended up opening up a trust in 2015. And that's when I became a trustee. So I've been doing this for a while. I've helped hundreds of people set up their trust as well as create passive income. So tonight I'm going to be teaching you guys the blueprint on how you guys can create a trust, as well as how you can utilize that to build wealth, okay? So a disclaimer, this is not legal advice. This is not tax advice. So I am not a licensed attorney or a certified public accountant, okay? So the objective of tonight's webinar is that you guys are going to learn what is a trust, the contributors involved in a trust, the operations, the tax strategies, some wealth strategies, as well as how to protect your assets, okay? All right, hold on one second, guys. There we go. All right, so my question to you is, how does these companies pay no taxes, right? How do they do that? You have Amazon, you have Berkshire Hathaway, you have Trump, right? So we have heard Trump say that he doesn't pay taxes because he's smart. So you have to think about that, right? And even Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett has said that he pays less taxes than his secretary. So how is it that a billionaire pays less taxes than his secretary, right? So we have to know and understand that the way that they're doing that is by utilizing these tools, right? They're utilizing trust in their structure in order to be able to safeguard their wealth as well as reduce their tax liability. So if Trump is doing it, if Warren Buffett is doing it, if Jeff Bezos is doing it, you guys also need to be doing your due diligence and research to find out, what is a trust? How can I implement it? How can I use it to my advantage so that I can build wealth efficiently, effectively, especially if you are trying to leave a legacy, okay? So I have a $1 bill here, and my question to you is, do you see the word trust? Right? So you could come off of mute and you tell me if you see the word trust in the $1 bill.
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, thank you for your participation. So you see the word "in God we trust." You have to understand that the United States of America is a corporation, right? You have a president, you have a vice president, the same things as a corporation. And they are utilizing trust and insurance in their structure, okay? So In God We Trust is actually a trust entity that the United States of America Corporation uses, okay? Another thing is that if you are born here in the United States, or if you were ever issued a birth certificate or a social security, they have actually created a trust for you as well, right? So they use that instrument to create a trust, and then they tie that trust to an insurance policy. So that's how you're able to get all these social benefits, because they pull it from the insurance policy, okay? So if the United States of America is doing it, you also need to be doing it, where you set up a trust and you also set up insurance. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. So what exactly is a trust entity? So a trust is an entity, right? It is a contract. It's a three-party contract. The parties involved are a grantor, a beneficiary, and a trustee. So a trust actually has two parts to it. It has an indenture. The indenture means agreement, okay? So it is a contract, and it has a declaration. So that is your purpose and intent for the trust, right? Why are you creating the trust? So a trust is very unique. It actually has a purpose compared to other entities that are created, okay? And there's several different types of trust, but mainly the trust is created for the benefit of someone else. So it's created for a beneficiary. A trust is seen as a living, breathing entity. So it's seen just like you and just like me, like a person, okay? So a trust actually has a body, and that body is called a corpus. So you hear the word corpus and you think of corpse, body. So pretty much whenever you have any type of issues when it comes to your trust, you need to go back to the contract, right? You need to go back to the governing instrument to figure out what are the provisions in that trust, okay? So that's what a trust is. It is an entity, and you can use it. It can do anything that a natural person can do. So if you as a natural person, if you could buy a house, a car, if you could write a book, the trust can also do all those things as well, okay? It can purchase a house, a car, it can build credit, it could buy a book, it could write a book, okay? So who are the parties involved when it comes to you actually setting up and operating a trust. So you have the grantor. The grantor is the creator of the trust, okay? So that is the individual who is actually establishing the trust. And another name for grantor that you might hear interchangeably is settlor or trustor, okay? So all those names can be used to represent the grantor or the creator, okay? So that individual is pretty much one, the person who establishes the trust, but two, the person who on paper actually funds the trust, right? Or puts, you know, some type of consideration or value to the trust. So you cannot create a trust without putting value to it, okay? So when you are establishing a trust, it pretty much has zero. And so you have to add something of value. It could be, you know, land, it could be a $1 bill, it could be precious metal, whatever it is that you want, okay? So the grantor creates the trust and then they appoint a trustee. The trustee is the individual who is the controller of the trust. So that's the individual who is going to be operating the trust on a day-to-day basis. They're managing all the assets in the trust, and they are the fiduciary. So they're the fiduciary to the beneficiaries. So they are the ones that are acting legally and lawfully and operating this trust in, you know, at their full discretion, okay? So the trustee, their main, you know, their main duty is to grow the trust, right? To make sure that the trust is managed properly, okay? And then you have the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are the inheritors of the trust. So the trust was created for the benefit of those individuals, and they are the ones who are going to receive all the assets in the trust. So the trust right now, it has assets, and when the trust is expired or terminated, then all those assets go to the beneficiary. So in a sense, they are the individuals who own the trust, right? The trust doesn't have an owner because
We can't hear you.
Christina is mute. You muted.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So a trust, it doesn't have an owner, okay? So just like you and I are living persons, a trust is a living entity as well. And so you can't own a trust. You can only have beneficial interests in a trust, and you can control, you know, can control the trust, okay? So the beneficiaries are the individuals that are going to receive the assets once the trust is terminated. So a trust has an establishment date, which is also considered a birthday, okay? So on some of the paperwork that you're going to be filling out, sometimes you're going to see it says date of birth, and that's just what you have to fill out, okay? You have to fill out the date of birth for the trust, which is the establishment date. So if you're establishing your trust today, then today is the date of birth. So you have to also determine how long you're going to operate the trust for. So if it's for 100 years, then that's the termination date or the day that the trust is going to expire or die, okay? And so once that day comes, if you decide that you're not going to renew the trust, then the trustee at that time needs to deed over all of the properties and surrender all of the like the bank accounts and everything, all of the assets to the beneficiary. So they have to do a distribution to the beneficiaries for all of the assets that are in the trust, okay? So the beneficiaries, their main objective is that they want to, one, understand the contents of the trust, right? Because the trust is obviously for their benefit. And two, they need to understand the trustee powers, right? So what can the trustee do and what can they not do on, you know, on my behalf, okay? So that's what the beneficiaries, what their goal is. So another appointed officer is a protector. So that individual is an individual that's put in place in order to watch the trustee, because within trust in this industry, we've seen that trustees have mismanaged funds and have dissipated people's wealth and, they end up getting, sued. And unfortunately, when it comes to the trustee, you can't get rid of them. They would have to resign. And so that's why the protector position was put in place, so that the protector can watch the trustee to make sure that they are dealing legally and lawfully, and in the best interest of the beneficiaries, so that the beneficiaries can, enjoy pretty much the fruits of labor of what the individuals that established the trust put in place. Okay, so the protector can force the trustee to resign, or can actually, fire them or terminate them. They can actually initiate audits. They can initiate some type of like arbitration and mediation, things like that, in order to resolve the issues if there's any issues. So if you are the trustee of your trust, then you do not need to appoint a protector right now. So that's an optional position. So you might want to think about that in the near future, like 15, 20 years down the line, when you're going to step down as the trustee, and whoever you appoint as your successor, which is the person who's going to take over after you, then you can think about appointing a protector to watch the successor. So you do need a successor. A successor trustee is a person who's going to take over after you if you become incapacitated, if you resign, or if you expire. Your trust is going to outlive you. And so it's super important that you actually have a successor that's documented, because this individual or person is going to be able to take over, and the trust will be able to continue on. There's not going to be any pauses or discrepancy in the operation of the trust. Okay. So there's several different types of trusts. You have a living trust, land trust, charitable trust, irrevocable, revocable. So there's several different categories of a trust too. So I'm going to briefly go over some of them. The first category that I want to tell you guys about is express versus implied. So you can have an implied trust, which is an oral trust. So that means that you can orally say, what you want to be in your trust, and it sticks, it stands. And then you have the other version of it, which is an express trust, which is a written trust. So if you were to pick between those two categories, I would tell you to pick an express trust, because it's in black and white, it's written down on paper on a contract. The next types of categories is statutory versus non-statutory. So with that type of trust, you have with a statutory trust, those are typically the trusts that are formed by attorneys, because attorneys are, they practice litigation. And so they practice in a statutory way where they are licensed in their state and they have to abide by the state statutes and codes. And so if you go to an attorney for a trust, they're going to put all the state statutes and codes inside of your trust. All of those verbiage, that verbiage is going to be in there, which means that you're restricted. You can only use that trust in that state. So me, I'm in Florida. So if I was to go to a Florida attorney and set up a trust, I can only use that trust in Florida. Okay. So another thing is that you have statutory court systems, right? So meaning if I was to go through a lawsuit and I was to go to court, I would be going to a local statutory court that's dealing with the Florida laws. So so that's, one type of trust, but like I said, you're limited to that type of trust. So if you wanted to do any type of investment in California, you couldn't use that trust. You would have to go and establish a trust over there in California. So now another category is non-statutory. So with a non-statutory trust, that means that it falls under common law. So it doesn't fall under the legislative law of the United States of America. So it's prior to the Constitution, when the United States of America was the continental United States. So with that being said, because you have a non-statutory common law trust, you can actually operate that trust in the whole nation, right? So if you set it up in Florida, you can operate it in California, New York, Wisconsin, or wherever else you want to, because it doesn't have, and it's not limited to the state statutes and codes, okay? So that's very important when you are setting up your trust. You want that type of trust, a non-statutory. Another category is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So discretionary means that you have full discretion over what you as the trustee can do in your trust, okay? So that is the type of trust that you want, is a trust where you have full power and control. So that means that obviously our trust, let's just say, is 20, 30 pages. Not everything that might occur with the trust is in the 20 pages. So you have full discretion to decide and make a decision on behalf of the trust. But then you have other types of trusts where you don't have full discretion. It's a non-discretionary trust. So that means that you are limited and you cannot make decisions outside of what's in the governing instrument, okay? Then you have irrevocable versus revocable. So this only applies to the grantor, okay, which is the person who's establishing the trust. So with a revocable trust, that trust can be changed, okay? It can be changed, amended, altered, right? So any verbiage that you have in the trust, you can change the verbiage. It can also be a revocable trust. It can be terminated. You can also change beneficiaries. And then if you, as the grantor, put property into the trust, you can pull it out at any time, okay? Because that trust is revocable, it is not seen as, as a binding or solidified trust, because it can be changed, okay? And so if you were to go through litigation with that type of trust, then they would pierce the trust, okay? And then your other type of trust is an irrevocable trust. With that type of trust, the grantor cannot make any changes, okay? So they have no power and no control over the trust. So they cannot make any amendments to the trust. If they were to put property into the trust, they cannot take it back. The trustee would have to sell it back to them. And they cannot remove beneficiaries from the trust. So you as the grantor have what we call irrevocability, okay? So with that type of trust, is seen as a solidified trust because it can't be changed by the person who created it, okay? So because trust deals in trust law and contract law, everything that we do is a contract, okay? So for example, I live in a house, so I had to execute a contract to live in this house. I have lights on, so I have a contract between the trust and the utility company, right? So everything that we do is contracts. So when you have an irrevocable trust, the judge, 9 times out of 10, they decide not to pierce that trust because they don't want to go against contract law, okay? So if you were to choose any type of trust, you would definitely want an irrevocable trust, okay? And with that being said, you would just choose someone to be your grantor. You do not want to be the grantor of your irrevocable trust, because that's you locking yourself out of the trust because you have no power, control, or influence. So the position that you want within the trust that you're establishing is the trustee. You want the control, you want the power, you want the influence, you want to make decisions, you want to be the fiduciary of, the wealth that you are creating. So that's why you are going to be the trustee of your trust, okay? So let's talk about how to create a trust. Okay, so number one, you're going to determine what type of trust you want to create. Okay, so we just went through a lot of different types and categories of trust. So just determine the type of trust that is in the best interest of you. So once you figure out what type of trust you want to create, number two, you're going to determine a trust name. So how do you name your trust? Your trust does not have to have the word trust in the name. Okay, a lot of people, they're confused and they think that it has to end in the word trust, but it does not, okay? Which is good because that actually aids in aids in you concealing the type of entity that it is, right? So when it comes to you naming your trust, you do not want to name the trust after you. So if your name is John Doe, you don't want to name the trust John Doe, okay? Because what we're doing here is we're protecting our assets, we're concealing our identity, and we're practicing obscurity. So with that being said, you do not want to publicly let people know like, hey, this is John Doe's trust, right? So do not name it after you. If you, want to, just use your initials or something similar. If you're naming a business trust, you can actually use abbreviations like LLC, company, corp, things like that. You can use that within naming your trust. Okay, so once you've figured out a name for your trust, then you're going to appoint the different parties. So you need to appoint a grantor, right? You do not want to be the grantor of your trust if you are creating an irrevocable trust, okay, which is the best type of trust. That's what we call a bulletproof trust, okay? So when you are creating that type of trust, you're going to appoint someone to be a grantor. That individual is going to be, let's just say, they are going to be someone who is qualified to be a grantor. So they obviously have to be 18 and older, and they have to have the ability to notarize the trust, because the trust needs to be notarized by you as well as the trustee, okay, by you and the grantor. So with that being said, the grantor needs to be at least 18 and older. And it could be anybody. It could be a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, a cousin, a coworker, anyone who is able to notarize the trust. And just know that that individual doesn't have any power, control, or influence. So you don't have to be afraid of actually choosing someone to be your grantor. So then you're going to choose yourself as the trustee, right? Because you want to have control over your assets. You're going to choose your beneficiaries, which typically they can either be another entity, like another trust, or they can be your next of kin, right? So they can be your children or your siblings, whoever. You have to think about it, right? If I wasn't to wake up tomorrow, then who do I want my 6 figures in the bank to go to, right? So think about that. And then your successor, we spoke about your successor, because you have to understand that your trust is going to outlive you, okay? So you need to prepare for that. And so you need to choose a successor. And that person obviously needs to be qualified. So they need to have the desire to want to actually operate a trust, and they need to accept the position. And then they also need to be readily available, okay? So you always need to be checking with the successor to make sure that they're still available to hold that position. Number 3, you're going to create the trust agreements, right? So you're going to go through the contract, you're going to customize it, you're going to put your name there, your establishment date, all the different parties involved, what rules and restrictions that you want, right? So for example, if you wanted to put a restriction that the beneficiaries can't receive, a distribution until they're 25, then you can do that. And once your trust is customized and it has all of the provisions that you desire, then you're going to print it out and you're going to notarize it. So you have to sign, you and the grantor have to sign in front of a notary. Once it's notarized, that means it is legalized, okay? So that means that it's legal and you can start operating your trust. So the first thing that you're going to do is, remember I said that when you're establishing your trust, you actually need to you need to have some type of value. You need to put value to the trust, okay? So with that being said, you are going to open up a trust bank account, okay? So you're going to receive whatever consideration that is. Let's just say it's $1,000, okay? So the first thing that you're going to do after notarizing is you're going to get an EIN. So you're going to go to the irs.gov website. They're going to ask you what type of structure you're going to fill out trust, and then you're going to put your information. They're going to give you an EIN. So you're going to take the EIN as well as your certificate of trust, which is one of the forms that you notarized when you got your trust, and your board meetings, right? So you're going to have a meeting. So everything when it deals with a trust, it goes down in the meetings, right? So you have to be operating your trust, the right way. And so if you're operating it efficiently, you're going to be having board meetings. So you're going to have a meeting to establish that you, the trustee, is going to be the authorized signer. You're going to open up in a bank account with, let's just say, Wells Fargo, and it's going to be a checking account. And so you're also going to take that with you. You're going to go down to the bank and you're going to open up that account and deposit those funds, right? That $1,000. So that $1,000 that you're initially funding your trust with, you are actually going to consider that a loan. So the trust is going to give you a promissory note saying that they promise to pay you back the $1,000 plus interest in a 12-month period, okay? Because those are your funds that came from, your W-2 income or your business. And so the trust needs to pay you back. So you can actually take loans from the trust and you can give loans to the trust, okay? So number 6, we're going to transfer assets. So what does that look like? Let's just say that you had a primary residence and you want that house to go into your trust. Then what you're going to do is that house is in your name, okay? Which is a liability because you own that primary residence, anybody and everybody can see that you own that house, okay? And so you become low-hanging fruit for an attorney or someone who wants to sue you, because here in the United States is a sue-friendly country. So if you, because you're in the public records, you need to remove yourself from the public records. And the way you do that is by transferring that property into the trust. So the way you're going to do that is through a quick claim deed, okay? And so on the quick claim deed, it's going to show that you're going to be gifting the property to your trust, okay? So you don't have to sell the house to the trust, you can just gift it. So you can put a dollar amount of $0 or $1 on the quick claim deed. You are going to be the grantor, giving up ownership to the grantee, which is the trust. So that quick claim deed also needs to be notarized, and then you are going to submit it to either the clerk of courts in your county or the county recorder's office. So once you submit it, then they are going to update their records, and it's going to reflect on the public records that now the trust owns that house, okay? So that is extremely powerful. So now what does it look like operating the trust, right? So now the trust owns an asset, which is your primary residence. So the trust is now having the financial responsibility of anything dealing with that asset, okay? So that asset, you have utilities, you have maintenance, you have taxes, you have, mortgage. So the trust actually has to pay the mortgage. Now it needs to come from the trust bank account, okay? Because there needs to be one, consistency, and 2, you don't want to commingle funds. So if the trust owns the asset and you want that true protection, then anything associated with the asset needs to be paid by the trust because the trust is the owner. So with that being said, the trust needs to pay the utilities, the maintenance, or anything associated with it, the taxes, the mortgage. Okay, so that's what it looks like operating the trust, right? You're going to be paying bills now. You're going to be managing a bank account and bookkeeping and things of that nature. Okay. So asset protection and privacy are the #1 reasons why you want to actually set up a trust. It can protect you from lawsuits, foreclosure, divorce, probate, bankruptcies, and heavy taxations. So we're going to go through a couple of these. So for example, with the lawsuit, right? Let's just say that you have a company, right? You have a LLC, right? LLC stands for limited liability company. And so it's in the actual word, right? Limited liability. That means that you have limited liability on what might happen. So if somebody decides to sue your business, right, they can actually see who the owner of your company is. All they have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website and they have to put in the name of your company, and then the owner, which is you, will come up, or vice versa. They only have to put in the owner's name, and then the name of the business or the businesses that you own in that state will also come up. So now they know who they need to go after, right? So let's just say that your business is sued. So it goes through litigation, and if it loses the lawsuit, the judge can decide to pierce the corporate veil. And if the judge pierces the corporate veil, that means that they can go after the owner directly. And so if you're the owner, then they can go after you for your personal assets. So if you have a house, they can freeze your assets, they can garnish your wages, they can freeze your bank accounts, they can seize your property. So you do not want to be in that position. And so in order to protect yourself, because we're in the business of asset protection, so in order to protect yourself, you need to actually remove yourself as the owner of that company, and you need to add the trust as the owner of the company, because your trust can actually own other entities and can own businesses and corporations and be, a shareholder. So what you want to do is you want to do an amendment, and you want to remove yourself as the owner, and now you're going to add the trust as the owner, and then now it's going to reflect that the trust is the owner of that business, right? So now when it comes to that lawsuit that we were just talking about and the judge piercing the corporate veil, now they're going to have to go after the trust, and they can't come after you directly, okay? And so they are not going to know who's the grantor, the trustee, or the beneficiaries, or even what assets the trust owns, okay? So that is your first layer of protection, because a trust can protect you from creditors, okay? Next is divorce, right? So I'll give you a live example of something that happened with my client. So my client, he was investing in 2008, and he bought 2 houses, and pretty much those houses were upside down, okay? And so his wife prohibited him from putting more money into real estate because it was tough at that time. And so he didn't listen to her, and he decided to pick up more property, but he was strategic with it. And so what he did was he opened up a trust, and he bought 5 houses with the trust. So now today he owns 7 houses, and they are going through a divorce. Okay. So a divorce is between between spouses, right? Between two individuals. Okay. So because the spouses are getting divorced and they're suing each other, everything that is inside of the trust is not included in the divorce, okay? Because the trust is a separate entity from those individuals that are experiencing or going through this divorce. So those 5 houses that he acquired during that marriage are, solely belong to the trust, and he's the trustee, and it's protected, okay? So that's the type of situation that you want to put yourself in, where you are protecting your assets from divorce, because I don't know if you are aware of this, but divorce is a transfer of wealth, okay? So now let's talk about heavy taxation, and then we'll briefly touch on probate. So with heavy taxation, the goal is for you to keep as much money as possible, and for you not to be giving away half of your money to the IRS or the government, okay? So the way that you're going to do this is by utilizing a trust. One, because a trust, you can actually determine what is considered income. So it's something called DNI, which is distributable net income. And you as the trustee, let's just say that you was to get $100,000 into your trust, you can determine if that $100,000 is going to be considered income or not. That is extremely powerful, okay? Because if you decide that it's not income, then it's not going to trigger a taxable event, okay? So that's one thing. Another thing is that the type of trust that we use within our structure here is we use a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. It's also called a 508c1a trust. And with this trust, it's extremely powerful because you are not required to pay federal taxes, right? So you are exempt from paying federal taxes. So it is one of the exceptions to actually applying for a 501c3. So with a 501c3, you are tax exempt. So usually nonprofits are tax exempt, but you have to apply for that. And then they actually restrict your freedom of speech. So the exception to that is if you have a trust and that trust is designated as a 508c1a, then it's automatically tax exempt and not required to pay federal taxes. You can also not pay state taxes, sales taxes, and property taxes. So just imagine if you had, if that trust owns a property and that property you're paying, let's just say $5,000 a year in taxes, now you get to save on that $5,000. And that $5,000 can be allocated to something else. You can invest it into crypto or something else, stocks, and not have to give it to the county or the city or whoever is trying to collect taxes from you, okay? So that's extremely powerful. Another example that I like to give is Steph Curry, right? Steph Curry, he had a contract for $250 million, and his IRS tax return was public records. And so it showed that he paid over $142 million to the IRS and the state of California for taxes. $142 million in taxes. So just imagine if he was structured the right way, if he had a trust, and if he was actually utilizing these types of tools so that he could save, right? That money can go to your family. That money can go to you building generational wealth. That money can go to your philanthropic endeavors, okay? So you need to be smart about and intentional about saving on taxes, because it can actually expedite your wealth journey, okay, your wealth building journey. The last thing that I want to touch on when it comes to taxes is if you are a W-2 employee, right? And you have the type of trust that I talked about, which is a tax exempt nonprofit trust, you can donate up to 60% of your gross income to that trust. Meaning, if you generated $100,000, right, you can donate $60,000 on paper to your trust, okay? Then you'll get that donation receipt. And at that point in time, the IRS will only be able to tax you on $40,000 instead of the whole $100,000. So just imagine how much money you are saving by utilizing a trust and by utilizing these types of strategies so that you can save thousands of dollars on taxes, okay? So the last thing I want to touch on when it comes to asset protection is probate. So probate is something that's inevitable, and it's something that we all are going to have to go through. If you are smart, then you will get your affairs in order so that you can avoid probate. The only way that you can avoid probate is by having a trust. A will not protect you from probate. You will end up in probate with a will, okay? So with that being said, what is the probate process? So let's just say that you have a house, right? And I always ask people this question because it's super important. You have a house right now. That house is in your name. How do you expect that house to be transferred to your children or your spouse? So the only way that that house is going to be transferred to your children or your spouse in the event that you expire is through a judge. So that means that you're going to be dragging your loved ones through court. We don't think about that. We are so wrapped around building generational wealth, acquiring assets, that we never think, how are these assets going to be transferred to my loved ones? So with that being said, the probate process works like this. So you are an individual and you have assets. Let's just say that you have a house, a car, 6 figures in the bank, right? But let's just say that you also have debt, right? You have student loan debt, you have credit card debt. So you expire, right? And at this point in time, your family is grieving, right? They're grieving your loss. And so if you don't have your affairs in order, if you don't have a trust in place, or if you didn't create your own estate, then they're going to be forced to go to court in order to get your assets. And so if you expire with all these assets and you do not have a trust, the state that you live in is going to issue you an estate. So they're going to call it John Doe estate, okay? And then your families are going to have positions within those estates as an executor and a trustee and all these things. But your estate needs representation, right? So one is going to end up in probate court. Two, you're going to need a probate attorney to represent your estate, okay? So now you are, your family is in court and they are, they have the attorney, they have the judge, but you had debt, right? So your debt is going to have to come out of your estate, okay? So one, your estate is going to pay out the credit card debt. Your estate is going to pay out the student loan debt, plus the IRS is going to take theirs. I don't know if you know this, but the IRS taxes you when you die. So there's something called a death tax. They also tax your inheritance. So they tax an estate tax, a death tax, and an inheritance tax. All of those taxes are going to be taken out of the probate, right? So out of your estate, okay, that the state issued for you, right? So that's more money being taken out, right? So that's all the debt that you that could have died with you but didn't, right? Plus all of the taxes, plus the attorney's fees, plus the court fees. So whatever is left over is what your family gets. And sometimes it takes years, right? And I've seen it to where families are not even able to keep mom's house or grandma's house because the fees are so much. So you don't want to do your family a disservice by dragging them through that process. And so the way you avoid probate is by you setting up a trust, which is your own estate, and now you putting your assets into your trust, because your trust will never go to probate because the trust owns the assets, okay? If you have a will, your will doesn't own anything. It's just a piece of paper that says, my daughter gets this and my son gets that. It's not sufficient. It's not going to hold up in court, and it's not a way to transfer your wealth. It's not good enough. Another thing is that if you die with debt, right, and you have a trust, your debt dies with you. So that student loans, those credit card, debt and all that stuff, that died with you. Those creditors cannot go after your trust or after, anything that your kids are going to inherit. So you want to have your affairs in order and avoid the probate process as much as possible, okay? Next, let's go through the wealth building formula. Thank you for sticking with me. We are almost done. So with the wealth building formula, this is how you guys are going to strategically build wealth, okay? So the way that you do that first is through structure. Structure is very important, and let's go through it. So with this formula, I recommend that you have 3 different types of trusts. The first one is a business trust, the second one is a private family trust, and the third one is a tax exempt trust, okay? So let's just say that you have a business, you have an LLC or an S corporation, okay? So you are generating income with that business, right? So that's one. But two, we are in the business of protecting our assets. So what we're going to do is we're going to establish that business trust, and that business trust is now going to be the owners of that LLC, right? Or the authorized member, okay? So that's the term that we use when we're talking about LLC. So they're going to be the authorized member of that LLC or that corporation, okay? And so now that business trust is acting as a holding company. So the business trust is not going to be operating, it's just going to hold the entity or the business that is operating, okay? So now that LLC that is owned by the trust, right? Let's just say that it generated $100,000, right? So what that LLC is going to do is it's going to do a K-1 distribution, and it's going to distribute 100% of the income to the business trust, okay? So that's extremely powerful, because now that the LLC distributed 100%, it has a 0% tax liability, okay? So that means you don't have to pay taxes on that 100%, on that $100,000. So now the $100,000 is at the business trust, okay? So what you can do here is when the funds arrive to the business trust, you can allow them to just, sit in the trust, and then you can expend the money from the trust. And as long as you are not doing like taking it out, then it doesn't trigger a taxable event, right? So as long as you don't 1099 yourself, things like that, because once you 1099 yourself, then you have to pay taxes, okay, on that income on both sides, okay? So what you can do with the business trust is, one, if you needed to use that $100,000, you can take out a loan from the business trust, okay? So you're going to let that money sit in there, and then you're going to issue yourself a loan. That loan could be for the entire $100,000. So the business trust is going to issue you a loan with a promissory note and all that stuff. And then now it arrives to your personal account, and you can use it for personal use, okay? Or what you can do is that $100,000, you can distribute it to the beneficiary. And so the beneficiary of the business trust is going to be the private family trust, because the money that is used to sustain your family is coming from the business, okay? So now that $100,000 is going to be distributed to the private family trust. And now at the business trust level, you have a 0 tax liability, okay? Because you distributed all the money. So now you don't have to pay taxes on the business trust. So now all the money is at the private family trust level, okay? And at that level, you're going to expend, okay? So that means that you're going to be paying for your mortgage, your utilities, your insurance policies, your groceries, kids' tuition, everything, right, is going to come out of that account, okay, out of the private family trust. And so that $100,000, let's just say that you expended it all the way down to $20,000. So there's only $20,000 left. So what are you going to do? You're going to pay taxes on the $20,000, right? So a trust is actually taxed at the highest tax bracket, right? At the highest tax level, which is, it's taxed at like 38%, okay? And so do you really want to pay taxes? No, you want to reduce your tax liability. So instead of you paying taxes on the 38% on the $20,000, what you're going to do is you are going to donate that $20,000 to your tax exempt trust, okay? So that tax exempt trust, like I said, the names are interchangeable. You have faith-based organization, you have a 508c1a, you have a ministry trust, you have a church, convention, auxiliary, all these different names, okay? But at the end of the day, it's a nonprofit and it's tax exempt. So you're going to donate the $20,000 to your tax exempt trust. At that point in time, you're done paying taxes, because now, because you donated that $20,000 at the private family trust level, you are at a 0% tax liability, okay? So you have you pay zero in taxes. And once that 20,000 arrives to the tax exempt trust, you're done filing, because you do not have to file federal taxes with that trust. So with that $20,000 that's inside of the trust, what can you do with it? You can invest it, right? You can put it into crypto, you can put it into stocks, you can do whatever you want with the $20,000. You can also take out a loan and borrow it and, you know, do other stuff with it, okay? So that's extremely powerful, okay? So to recap, the business trust, you're going to use it either as a holding company to own your LLCs and S Corps that you already have in existence, or that you actually want to establish. You're going to actually create the owner first before you create the LLC. Or you can actually just do business with it outright. So you don't need an LLC, right? An LLC, you're creating it through the Secretary of State, and you're giving them the rights to regulate your business. So you can actually just set up your business trust and conduct your business that way, okay? Then your private family trust, that's going to be your asset holding trust. So that's where you're going to put all of your assets, because you don't want to put it in your business trust because you're conducting business. It's risky, and the chances of you getting sued are higher than your private family trust, okay? Because you're out there doing business in the world. So the private family trust is where you're going to hold all your assets, like your house, your car, your precious metal, your insurance policies, all these things. And then the tax exempt trust, that's where you're going to be doing your charities, your philanthropic endeavors, and, you know, everything that you want to do for the community, okay? So let's move on to the second pillar, which is credit. So your business trust can build business credit. All three of the trusts can, but you don't want to build credit with all three trusts. You just want to choose one that you're going to be building credit with, okay? And so that's going to be the business trust, right? The trust that you're not going to have any assets. And so with that being said, you're going to be building corporate credit now, and it's the same way as building traditional business credit, okay? So you're going to get a DUNS number, you're going to look fundable. So you're going to get a virtual address, a corporate phone number, all of these good things. And then you're going to start applying for trade lines. Okay. So as long as you get, you know, anywhere between 5 to 10 trade lines, then you're going to generate a paydex score. And so you can start building that corporate credit. So 9 times out of 10, if you want to build credit at a faster rate, then you want to, you know, be a personal guarantee, right? And you shouldn't have an issue with that if you plan on paying the money back, because we're intentional about building wealth. Okay. We're not trying to, you know, we're not trying to leverage credit and not pay it back. Okay. So you're going to be building business credit. You can get lines of credit, you can get loans, you can get credit cards. Okay. With a trust, you can get home equity lines of credit, all kind of stuff. You can get a mortgage, anything. And then with the tax exempt trust, because it's a nonprofit, you can qualify for nonprofit grants. So now you are in a position to where you have funds. And so what are you going to do with those funds? You are going to invest. Okay. So now let's go to the next pillar, which is investing. So these are the two investments that I recommend the most, but you can do other investments. Okay. So one is index universal life insurance policy, and the next one is real estate. Okay. So let's dive into this. So with an index universal life insurance policy is short for IUL, right? So an IUL policy is going to put you in a position to where you are going to be paying yourself first. So this is a lifestyle shift. This is a mindset shift, right? Because we are not used to paying ourselves first. We are used to always getting paid last. And so traditionally what happens is we have, you know, a W-2 job, and let's just say, you know, today's Friday and we get paid, right? Once that money hits our bank account, the IRS already took theirs. The Social Security Administration already took theirs, and Medicaid already took theirs. So those are 3 deductions plus a 401k that already came out of your paycheck before you even saw your paycheck. Okay. So that is, So you're actually getting paid last and not first with that situation. And so what you want to do is, let's just say that you got $10,000 into, you got paid today, right? So that $10,000, normally what do? We go and we pay our mortgage, we buy groceries, put gas in the car, pay the car note, right? That is usually the process. And so by the time that we're done making all those payments, we only have, $2,000 left. So with that $2,000, we put it into a savings account, a high yield savings account, or we just leave it in our checking account, right, to accumulate. And so that's not you putting yourself in a position to pay yourself first. And so the alternative is for you to use insurance, right? For you to use an insurance policy. So your insurance, a lot of people think that insurance is supposed to be used for when they die. But in fact, insurance is supposed to be used when you are living, right? It has living benefits, and that's exactly what you need to use it for, when you are living. And insurance is actually, a policy is actually an asset, right? So it's liquid, right? It has liquidity and it is an asset. And that's the way you need to see it, because that's also the way that the insurance company sees it, okay? And you have to also understand that, one, for the United States of America, their number one investment is insurance policies. For the banks, like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, those banks, their number one investment is not mortgages and credit cards, it's insurance policies. So if the banks and if the country is doing it, you also need to be doing it. Okay. Me, I have 5 policies. So what's so unique about this is that with an IUL, right, you see the word index in there, so it mirrors the index, okay? So that means that it's mirroring the market, okay? So with an index, you have different types of indexes. You have the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, right? So my particular policies, they mirror the S&P 500. So whatever the S&P 500 is doing, then the insurance company is going to match it. So if the S&P 500 is doing 8%, then I'm going to get an 8% return on my policy, on my cash value, okay? So with this type of policy, you get to build cash value, and it also comes with a death benefit. So what's going to happen is you're going to use it for infinite banking, be your own bank, private money banking. Those are the terms that you normally hear out here in the industry when you're using this type of strategy, right? And so what's going to happen is, like I said, you're going to pay yourself first. So that $10,000 that you just got paid, you are going to deposit it into your insurance policy, okay? So that money is going to go straight into your insurance policy before you even decide to pay your mortgage, your car note, your groceries, or any of those things, okay? You're going to park it in your policy, and your cash value is going to go up by that $10,000, okay? And so, like I said, the insurance company sees your policy as an asset because that's exactly what it is, and you have liquidity. So what's going to happen now is you are going to borrow out that money that you just deposited. You're going to borrow it out from the insurance company, okay? And so the insurance company is not going to touch that $10,000 that's in your cash value. What they're going to do is they're going to issue you a loan from their reserves, from their own money. Okay, so that is extremely, extremely powerful, because the loan that they're going to issue you is going to be a disbursement, and it's going to go straight into your bank account. So once you receive it in your bank account in like 1 to 2 days, then you are able to pay your bills, right? Then you're able to pay your car note, your insurance, groceries, and all that stuff, okay? And so they're going to charge you interest for the loan that they gave you, but it's usually a small amount. So let's just say like 2-3%, right? But your $10,000 is in your in your cash value, and it's going to be generating 8, 9, 10%, whatever the market is doing. Okay. So that's extremely powerful, because now instead of you, like, once you got paid, instead of you paying your bills first, you decided to pay yourself first. So instead of you spending all the money and only having $2,000 left and putting that into the policy, now you're able to make a return on $10,000 because you decided, I'm going to pay myself first before I pay Bank of America the mortgage. And so you deposited that funds into your insurance policy. Okay. And then from that point on, like I said, you borrowed it out. So you do not have to pay back that loan, right? So that loan from the insurance company, you don't have to pay it back. It's optional. If you decide that you do not want to pay it back, then they take it from the death benefit. Okay. But you can very well pay it back. And then at that point in time, you're just building up more cash value. Okay. So this is the concept of you paying yourself first, because we are in the business of building generational wealth, and we're building that generational wealth for our families. So with this particular policy, what you're going to do is, the strategy is that you are going to have this policy be owned by the trust. So the trust is going to own the policy and be the payer of the policy and the beneficiary of the policy. Okay. So that means that you are going to be the insured. So if anything happens to you, because you have to understand, you are a human resource when it comes to the trust. You are a human asset when it comes to the trust, right? Because the trust is depending on you. You are the trustee, as well as the beneficiaries, right? So if anything happens to you, right, if you expire, the trust is at a loss. So the trust needs to be compensated for that loss. And how that happens is by the trust being the beneficiary of your insurance policy, because now that death benefit goes to the trust, right? That $2-3 million, that goes to the trust, which is extremely powerful. Okay. So you want your trust to be the owner, the payer, and the beneficiary. Okay. So anything that the trust owns, the trust needs to pay. Okay. So the trust is going to be paying those premiums. Okay. One thing that I want to tell you guys is that there's a 3-year rule when it comes to the IRS. Okay. So the IRS, I told you, they tax you when you die, right? So if you have an insurance policy, they're going to tax your insurance policy, that inheritance tax and that estate tax. Okay. So in order to avoid that is by you having the policy in a trust. If the policy is owned by a trust, then the IRS is not going to tax the death benefit. That's one. Two, let's just say that you already have a policy. If you already have a policy, you want to switch your policy ownership to your trust as soon as possible. But if you die within those 3 years, right, they have a 3-year rule. If you die within the 3 years of transferring your policy from your personal name to a trust, then they're going to tax your death benefit. Okay, so that means that your beneficiaries are going to receive less funds. Okay, so if you do not have a policy yet, then you want to set up your trust first, and then have your trust do the application for your insurance policy, so that the trust is the owner, the payer, and the beneficiary of your policy. Okay, that is super important, because you want to avoid that 3-year rule. You don't want to give the IRS more than they're already getting. Okay, so that's what I have to say about insurance. And then the next investment is real estate, right? Real estate is it's a tangible asset. Okay, and anybody and everybody should be getting into real estate. I'll touch on it in just a few, because I want to keep this I want to be respectful of your time. Let's see, what time is it? 9:11. So we are about to wrap it up. So with real estate, right, there's a specific strategy that I want to let you guys know about. So traditionally with real estate investors, what do? We get a house, right? And we put a tenant in there, we put a family, let's just say it's a 4 or 5 bedroom house, we put a family in there. And then at that point in time, we collect rent, right? So we collect rent when? On the first of every single month, right? And so we are getting 12 payments every single year, right? 1 payment a month, 12 payments a year. But if you do the math, right? So if you divide 4 weeks by 52, right? If you do 52 weeks in a year divided by 4, you actually get 13. So what does that mean? That means that there is 13 months in a year. If there's 13 months in a year and you're a real estate investor and you're only collecting 12, you're at a disadvantage, okay? So that means that you are getting 1 less payment. So the way that you're going to make more money in real estate is by charging weekly versus monthly, okay? Because that's how you're going to recover that extra payment, okay? So that is extremely, extremely powerful, okay? Because you want to, you're in the business of making money and building wealth, okay? And not giving it away. So that's what you're going to do. Another thing that you can do is instead of renting to one family, you rent to professionals, you rent to individuals. So you rent each room individually, okay? That is also going to put more money in your pocket. So if you have a 5 bedroom house, normally you would rent to a family for $2,500, but a better strategy for you is if you have the same 5 bedroom house, you rent to 5 professionals. These could be traveling nurses, these could be traveling doctors, these could be, people in construction in, a city that has a large influx. So it could be anybody, right? That is a professional that qualifies and meets your standards, okay? And so you're going to be renting out that room, and that room is going to be obviously cheaper than an Airbnb, cheaper than a hotel, and you're going to be renting it out on a weekly basis. So just imagine getting 5 payments of rent every single Sunday versus you getting 1 payment on the first and only getting 12 payments a year, right? So I'm good at math. And so 12 payments versus 52 payments, I'm going to pick 52 payments all day long. Okay. So now let's tie it back to the trust. So in pillar 2, we had talked about credit. So now let's just say that you built up some business credit with your trust and you got a line of credit or a credit card for $50,000. What are you going to do? That $50,000, you're going to strip the credit card or you're going to take out of the line of credit. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to pay yourself first. So you're going to deposit that $50,000 into your insurance policy. Okay. You have to pay yourself first. So once that money is sitting in your IUL policy, you're going to borrow it out, right? So you're going to contact the insurance company, you're going to borrow it out. And now at that point in time, you have that $50,000 back. And so what you're going to do is, so now it's making money in your policy, right? It's making 8% in your policy and you have the funds in your hand. So now what you're going to do is you're going to acquire real estate. You're going to use that $50,000 as a down payment for that 5 bedroom house that we were just talking about. Okay. So that $50,000 is now going to serve as the down payment. And a trust can take out a mortgage. Okay. As long as the trust has income, it can actually take out a mortgage. Okay. So you're going to acquire that property with the trust. You're going to put $50,000 down. And then at that point, those payments, right? Those 52 payments, where are they going to go? So they're going to go into your insurance policy. So let's just say that you're making, $3,000 per week every single Sunday. So that $3,000 is going to go, you're going to park it into your insurance policy. You're going to borrow it out, and then you're going to pay back the credit card. Okay. So that is what you're going to do. And at this point in time, now your trust has 2 streams of income, right? It has the insurance policy where it's making 8% returns, plus it has the real estate where it's making, weekly, generating weekly cash flow. Okay. So that is extremely, extremely important because your trust is now self-sufficient. You don't want to set up a trust to where you keep pouring in your W-2 money. Okay. You want to put the trust in position that is making its own passive income and generating its own wealth. So how do you transfer your wealth, right? You want to be in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. And I'm going to say that again. You want to be in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. So ownership is not the way to go. It's stewardship. Stewardship is when you are being a good steward of your wealth and you're directing it in the right direction so that it doesn't get dissipated. You want it to last generations and generations and generations. We have billionaire families that are in their 9th, 10th, and 15th generation. So that is what we want to do. We want to put ourselves in position to where we are setting up trust and we are changing the trajectory of our family and we are getting rid of these generational curses. And the way that we do that is by setting up trust and educating our children and growing and having them grow up to be trustees, having them grow up to learn how to actually operate the trust so that they can take over one day, okay? So that is the position that you want to be in, okay? So stewardship is the way to go. So now let's talk about what that transfer looks like. So you have a trust. The trust owns the assets, okay? And so when you expire, there is no transfer that needs to occur because everything is going to stay in the trust, okay? The trust is going to continue to own all of the assets. So nothing needs to happen, okay? Which is powerful, right? Your family doesn't have to go through court and everything like that. So now, within a trust, we have what we call UBIs, which stands for units of beneficial interest, or the other name for it is TCUs, which are trust certificate units. Those trust certificate units are identical to stock certificates, okay? So with stock certificates, you know that it represents ownership in a company. Well, TCUs, it pretty much represents ownership in the trust, but we don't use the term ownership, so we use the term beneficial interest, okay? So it shows your beneficial interest in the trust. So your trust is going to have or generate or create 100 trust certificate units, and then you're going to distribute them to your beneficiaries. So let's just say that you have 4 beneficiaries, then at that point in time, you want to distribute the TCUs equally. So you're going to distribute 25 trust certificate units per beneficiary. So now let's just say that you have a quarterly distribution of $100,000. So for each person that has trust certificate units, they're going to be eligible to receive that distribution. So if you have 25 trust certificate units, is equivalent to you receiving a distribution of $25,000 of that 100K. Okay. And the same thing goes for when the trust is terminated. When the trust expires, all of the assets go to the beneficiaries. So if that trust has, let's just say that trust has 100 houses. So you know that the trustee is going to deed over 25 houses per beneficiary. Okay, so that is how it works. And that is what's represented as far as beneficial interest goes when you are transferring wealth. Okay. And then the last thing that I want to talk to you about is preservation. Okay, preservation of wealth is the most important thing because we've seen it to where you have these famous families, and after the second generation, all the money is gone. They're broke. Why? Because they were not educated the right way, and because there was not provisions in place in order to protect that wealth. So that's why you need to utilize a trust in order to preserve that wealth. And the way that we do that when it comes to preservation is primarily by using insurance. Okay, I'm going to keep stressing how important life insurance is. Okay, you can preserve your wealth that way. So like I told you in the previous slide, you are a human asset when it comes to your trust. Okay, so whenever there is so when it comes to your trust, every single person that is associated with your trust needs to have a policy, meaning all of the trustees, all of the beneficiaries. So as soon as a beneficiary is born, you are going to put a policy on them. The trust is going to apply for a policy for them. Okay, and so the trust is the payer, the trust is going to pay into that policy. That is extremely important because it goes back to preservation. Okay, so for example, you have this beneficiary. Now this beneficiary, right, when that baby was, let's just say 10, 15 days old, you insured that baby, right? So now fast forward, they're 18 years old and they want to buy their first car, right? So what normally happens is they're going to go down to the Ford dealership and they're going to apply for a loan and they're going to purchase a $30,000 car and they're going to get into, you know, payments, $500 a month for 4 years. That's typically what happens, right? And so they can go through that process, or what they can do is they can go to the trust, right? They can go to the estate. And so what happens is they're going to go to the trust and go to you as the trustee, and they are going to request a loan. So they're going to request a loan for the $30,000 that they need to purchase their vehicle. And so what's going to happen is that the trustee is going to approve the loan, issue out a promissory note that the beneficiary promises to pay back $30,000 plus interest, let's just say 2% for 4 years. So now instead of the beneficiary paying for dealership $500 a month, now they're going to pay the trust $350 a month. Okay, so that is the trust preserving wealth and building wealth from the inside. Okay, so that's one thing. So now where is that money going to come from, right? Is it going to come from the trust account? No, that money is going to come from the beneficiary's insurance policy. That beneficiary was insured from when they was 10, 15 days old, right? So now they need $30,000. So we're going to go into their policy. We're going to borrow out the $30,000. The insurance company is going to cut the check for $30,000, deposit it into the trust. The trust is going to cut the check to the beneficiary for the $30,000. Okay, the beneficiary is now going to purchase the car and start making the $350 payments. But what happens if the beneficiary decides that they don't want to pay anymore, right? They don't want to pay that $350 a month anymore. So they default, right? They default on their promissory note to the trust. Well, that is okay. Why? Because the money didn't come from the trust. The money came from the insurance policy. Okay, and that money does not need to be paid back. Why? Because it's going to be taken out of the death benefit. So at the end of the day, if the beneficiary defaults and they decide not to pay back that loan for that vehicle, the trust is going to be paid back when that beneficiary expires, and that death benefit goes to the trust. Okay, so that is extremely powerful when we're talking about preservation of wealth. That is what you need to be focusing on, because that is where that true generational wealth is. Like I said, you are changing the trajectory of your family. So this is how you're going to be educating them now. You're going to be educating them to be good stewards of the trust and of the wealth, okay? And you need to be utilizing all of these tools, which is trust and insurance policies. These are the books that I recommend. What Would the Rockefellers Do, okay? That is an extremely good book, and it's talking about utilizing insurance and utilizing a trust, okay? So you definitely need to read that book. The next one is The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2. That's definitely a really good book. If you that's going to teach you how to operate as a trustee, okay? Because operating as a trustee is super important. I see it all the time with my clients and with other people where they have a trust and they've never used the trust before because they're too afraid to use the trust, because they went to a company or they went to an attorney and they handed them a stack of papers and they didn't know what to do, because they don't know how to operate as a trustee. They don't know how to get an EIN and a bank account and start, building assets. Okay, so it's extremely important that you know that this is a lifestyle. So you're a trustee trustee now, right? You're not just a regular person out here, right? Using your name and your social security. Now you're going to be using the trust entity for everything. Okay. So that's a good book. The next one is Family Wealth, where you learn how to actually run a family business. Okay. In a family office. And the last one is the Complete Book of Trust. And with that book, you're going to learn the different types of trust. Okay. So take action on the information that I provided tonight. This evening, I told you guys how to set up a trust so that you can do business and you can make profit. Okay. So you actually setting up this trust can actually solve a lot of your problems and provide you with exceptional asset protection and you avoiding heavy taxation. But that's only going to happen if you decide to operate your trust the right way, right? You have to operate it properly in order for it to really, for you to take advantage of all of the benefits. Okay. So you need to treat your trust like it's a Facebook, Amazon, or Google, like it's a big business. Okay. Don't treat it like it's a little mom and pops and you don't want to actually utilize it for all of its benefits. Okay. So what we can do is we can work together. So I do have a program. It's called, you can either do it yourself, right? It's called the Wealthy Trustee Program, and you can do it yourself. And that's a course. It comes with 42 video modules where you will learn how to set up the 3 trusts that I'm talking about: the business trust, the ministry trust, and the private family trust. You're going to learn, you're going to receive the templates and the video trainings on how to set it up yourself. Okay, then you're going to also learn how to get the EINs, how to do your board meeting minutes, how to save on taxes, and how to build wealth utilizing what I was telling you about, right? The infinite banking, the real estate, the stocks. Okay, so you will learn all of those things in the modules. You have lifetime access to the course. You also have resources and ebooks. So the book recommendations that I just gave you, those books are in the course in an ebook form, okay? And some of those books are valued at $700 on Amazon just alone, okay? The resources are, if you need like the quick claim deeds, all your tax forms, all of your templates for your board meetings and trusts, they're in there. And then we have a Facebook community. So in the Facebook community, you are going to be able to ask questions and receive support. So if you're interested in the do it yourself, that is $997. And the other offer that I have for you guys is Done With You, where you and I, we are on a Zoom call. So you get a total of 5 Zoom calls. So we're going to set up your business trust together. We're going to set up your private family trust together, and we're going to set up your tax exempt trust together. We're also going to establish your business credit together, and we're going to apply for your EINs, do your board meetings, and transfer your assets. So if you have a policy and you need to do the paperwork for the policy, we'll do it together. If you have a house and you need to fill out the quick claim deed, we do it together. So if you are worried about having your trust set up the right way, then this is the option for you, because you get unlimited assistance, right? You get the Zoom calls are in a group setting. So usually it's a small, intimate setting, 15 to 20 people. And then if you need assistance outside of that, you get assistance outside of that. Okay. Plus you get lifetime access to the course. So you still get the 42 video modules, plus the resources, ebooks, and community. So that is, the price is $14.97 for the Done With You. Okay. If you guys are interested, you can go to wealthytrustee.com. So here's my contact information. So on the, you have my phone number there if you need it. That's my text community line. So that's the number that you received to get wait, what was it? That's the number that you received the Zoom link for, okay? There's my website, email, and then we can also stay connected on social media. So you can go to my personal page, which is I am Christina Yvette, or the company, which is 7 Ways to Wealth, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys what the program looks like, as well as what a trust looks like, because some individuals, they don't know what a trust looks like. And I'm actually also feeling generous So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer a discount, but it's going to be only until midnight. So you have literally like 2.5 hours. So for the do it yourself, it's going to be available for 50% off for the next few hours. And the done with you is going to be available for 20% off. So you can look inside of the chat and you'll be able to see the discount codes that you need in order to take advantage of that. So let's look at the program as well as, let's see here. Okay, so this is what the program looks like, the Wealthy Trustee program. Like I told you, there's 42 lessons. So you have that introductory, and then the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to learn about the trust entity. So what is a trust? Who are the grantors, trustee, beneficiaries, successors, protectors, the benefits of the trust and the types of trust. And then you're going to get into the tax exempt business trust. So these trusts are anywhere between 25 to 60 pages. There's 3 trusts in the program, okay? And so you're going to be learning I break down every single paragraph of the trust, because you have to know the contents of the trust in order for you to operate a trust, right? Efficiently and effectively. And so that's why here you're going to, I'm going to break down everything for you, okay? So you have all those video trainings. Then you're getting into the private family trust, how to apply for your EINs, then the unincorporated business trust, all the tax strategies that you need in order to reduce your tax liability down to 0, okay? And then how to apply for tax exemption with sales tax, how to determine your distributable net income, how to avoid tax evasion, because we're not in the business of doing anything illegal. And then you're going to learn about asset protection, right? So you need to take inventory of your assets to see which assets you're going to put into the trust. And then you're going to learn how to create a trust bank account, the different brokerage accounts, how to transfer your home deed, car titles, insurance policies, your LLC ownerships, how to do your board meeting minutes. And then the last one we're getting into is wealth creation, where you learn how to build credit with the trust and how to actually invest the trust funds into the stock market and do infinite banking. Okay, so you get all the resources and the ebooks. So that's what the program looks like. And then I'm going to show you guys what a trust looks like. So this is what a trust looks like. Hold on, let me go up to the top. So this trust is 47 pages. This is the unincorporated business trust. So everything that you see in red is what you're going to be filling out with the template, right? So you have your table of contents. These are all the sections and provisions. So this particular trust has 38 sections, okay? And then everything, like I said, in red is what you're going to be filling out. So this is all the verbiage that you need when you are operating under the common law jurisdiction and you're protecting yourself and your assets, okay? So this is exactly what a trust looks like. Like I told you guys, it is a contract. And the last thing I wanted to show you was this page here, which is you as the grantor are signing, the trustee is signing, and then you are having the notary sign as well. So that's what legalizes the trust. Okay, so the trust is legal and now you can start operating it. And if you guys are going to the bank, what you're going to use is this certificate of trust. So this here is just a summary of what the trust looks like or what's in the trust. The trust is 47 pages. You're not going to bring all 47 pages with you to the banks, to the dealerships, to the closing companies. It's private. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring the certificate of trust, which is just a small little snapshot of what the trust looks like. And that is what you're going to bring with you to the banks so that you can open up your account, or to the dealership so that you could purchase a car. Okay. So that needs to be signed by the grantor or the trustee, and it needs to be notarized. So now what I want to do is I want to introduce you to my insurance specialist. So his name is Mondo Grimes, and he is a reputable man. So he has assisted a lot of my clients in setting up IUL policies. And this is a person that I recommend when you are wanting to put yourself in a position to where you want to pay yourself first, okay? That's vitally important. And so Mondo is the one who's going to be setting up the IUL policies if you are in that realm of wanting to build generational wealth. So thank you, Mondo. You have the floor.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Christina did a phenomenal job by explaining insurance policies, IULs, and how to leverage them within your trust. A couple details I'll share briefly so we can let you go back to your evening. 30,000-foot view. We're going to talk about infinite banking regarding your trust. Just for a simple explanation, as Christina mentioned, it's a personal finance strategy to leverage an insurance policy as a personal bank for yourself. Okay, and there's certain elements to that, but I want to cover a couple things. Insurance is the safest industry to invest in. Okay, it's the safest. It's been going on for over 100 years. There are several details around this. Number one, uninterrupted compounding growth in your policy. It yields 5 to 6 times more than any CD. Okay, it also is guaranteed returns. I know we like that one, right? And what I'll tell you, the tax benefits are huge. Tax-free money, tax withdrawals, it's phenomenal. No reporting to the IRS. Now, I want to explain a couple of things here. There's a reason why a lot of people are saying, I've heard this statement, a question, how come I haven't heard of this process before, IULs or this infinite banking? Well, number one, there are many tight restrictions on advertising and marketing IULs. Insurance companies have a lot of tight restrictions on them from the government. Well, why is that? Because there's no taxes. Okay, that's why. So this is key. Now, again, a couple other small, more huge benefits really, but a couple more details. No credit checks. Obviously, when you're going into your IUL to withdraw, there's no credit check. Or as Christina was talking about, was going to the trust to buy your daughter a car. There's no credit check. Okay, there's no financial statements that are required. No repayment terms are required. You don't have to pay it back. Another thing is that there's no collateral needed. Reason why, to reiterate Christina's point, the death benefit is the collateral. Okay, and it's easily accessible, liquid cash. A couple examples of some additional people that I know, you were mentioning Amazon and a couple others, but I'm gonna give you a couple other examples as well. Number one, understand that 62% of equity managers, 62% of equity managers invest in the very funds they provide and manage. The rest of their cash goes into whole life IULs. Okay. Ray Kroc, Walt Disney, John McCain, when he ran for president, his entire campaign was paid for by an IUL cash value policy. Okay. J.C. Penney, President Biden, real estate investors, and you mentioned Citibank, Wells Fargo, Walmart, et cetera. Yes, exactly right. Okay. So this is a very extremely powerful tool. I mean, it can be understated. Here at my company's AMG and Associates, we are able to not only help you with your IUL, get you situated within your trust with your IUL, and work closely with Christina. However, we have other resources as well regarding, tax, things like that, if you're trying to clean things up, and any other questions regarding wealth management and creation. So that's a 30,000-foot view, Christina. I wanted to offer to everyone so they can understand a few of the details around it. And of course, if you want any more information, you can contact me directly. My website is amg-associates.com, amg-associates.com. Back to you, Christina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mondo. If you could put your website in the chat
Yes.
so that people are able to access it. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. If you have any questions for me about trust, if you have any questions about the insurance policy, because I know that we said a lot about it, the floor is open for questions. So you can either raise your hand or come off of mute.
Hello, Christina.
Hi, Patricia. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've got two questions. One for Mondo. Is the IUL, does it require a health check?
It depends. So most policies that are under $1 million in death benefit do not require a medical exam. Most carriers that provide have death benefits above $1 million. So literally $1 million and $1. If you're at that death benefit amount and above, it will require a doctor visit.
All right, thank
You're welcome.
you. The next question is for Christina.
Yes,
Christina, can you be a trustee and a beneficiary?
Yes, you can be a trustee and a beneficiary, but you cannot be the only beneficiary. So there has to be other beneficiaries in the trust in order for
Mhm.
you to act as both the beneficiary and the trustee.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to mention, Patricia, too, when you were asking Mondo that good question about the medical, if you don't think that you'll qualify for an IUL policy because of your medical, don't count yourself out, because you can also, because you are setting up a trust and the trust is the owner of the policy, you can insure the other people inside of the trust. So
Right.
because you are the trustee, the policy is still yours. So if you are going to be insuring your, young nieces and nephews and grandchildren and children, you can do that too. So you can still take advantage of the IUL policies and the infinite banking, and you can still have control over all of those policies, but the insured is not you. The insured are the younger generations inside of the trust, okay?
That's absolutely correct. And,
Awesome.
and
Awesome.
Patricia, I just did a case like this. The gentleman was uninsurable due to age.
Mhm.
He was in upper 80s, but however, he wanted to take out a policy on his great grandchildren, and he did so. So based on making them, the insured. So yes.
That's awesome. Wow. Okay. Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's extremely.
Now, is it advisable to go ahead with the insurance policy before the trust is set up?
No, so you want the policy to be owned by the trust, so you
Right.
need to set up your trust first and then you apply for your policy.
Right. If you did the policy first, then you're creating more paperwork on the backside, because then you have to transfer ownership to the trust, where you just don't want to go backwards. You just do it, get the trust done first, as Christina's suggesting. Yes, correct.
Okay. Last question, and then I'm going to let somebody else speak. Is the well, that question just evaded me. Wow. I'll just go ahead and mute and
Okay.
I'll think about it. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I got a question here. Patricia, you're cute. That was awesome. We've got two questions here for you, Christina.
Yes.
Camden and Kristen here. So
Hey, what's up, guys?
what's going on? So we're all listening silently. Number one, can you send this recording to us? Because there were parts that the kids were crying and we couldn't hear. Okay. And number two, my question is for, I apologize. What was your name, sir?
Mondo. My name is Mondo.
Mondo.
Yes, sir.
Tell me the benefit, the pros and cons of the doctor visit, of $1 million less and $1 million more. Obviously, more money, great. That's an obvious one. But what are the pros and cons?
Well, it's really more of a procedure for the insurance company to mitigate their risk. Okay.
Yeah.
So, if they're looking at more than $1 million, they want to make sure, if they're going to insure you, that there aren't any, uninsurable conditions going on. Right. And they want proof of that from a doctor versus just taking your word and my word for it. Okay.
Gotcha.
So it's really not a benefit for the doctor visit, so it's more of a protection mechanism for the insurance company.
And essentially all it is, hey, you don't want to see a doctor, you can have up to $1 million to use.
Correct.
If you want to see the doctor, we can get it as high as possible, right? Essentially.
Right. So what they will do below 1 million is they don't require a doctor visit. However, they will do a prescription history check. Okay. Cool. And they will even check the MIB, and that's the Medical Information Bureau. All insurance companies do this. They check the Medical Information Bureau to make sure. It's basically, think about it as your credit score for your health, your whole life. So they'll look at the MIB and they can see every doctor visit, every medication that you've taken since you've been here.
Gotcha.
So they will check that and check your prescription history, and that's it, but no doctors.
Okay. The reason I ask is I'm terrified of needles, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for my
I would have, there's no neodles.
Oh, you don't have to do a blood check? We don't have to do
No, they will do saliva. They will do all the other stuff. I mean,
I'll spit and I'll pee. I'll do whatever I got to do. I don't want needles.
there's all those types of other things. Yes, what you said.
Yes,
But
I love it.
But there's no need. Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, we're healthy. I'm good. All right, awesome. Thank you. I'll let someone else speak.
Thank you for that good question. We have a hand up from Zelma. Hi, Zelma. How are you?
Great. How's it going?
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay, great. I have a question for both of you.
Yes.
Okay, so and I like to just reiterate to make sure I understand what you're saying, because I know what I'm trying to do, but is, I just need guidance. Okay, but for Mr. Mondo, so let's say if I don't qualify for $1 million, but my grandchildren do, and I put them, I get a policy out for them, a whole life, right?
Correct. Yes.
And then that goes under the trust. So then now the trust owns the policy.
The
So
trust. Yes. The trust is
that's,
taking policy out on your grandson. Yes.
yes. And the reason why I would do them young, because they're young and, they haven't been through life. And so I could get $1 million or so on them, right? Even
Yes,
if I'm the grandparent.
that's correct. Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, so that's how the trust will have money. But let's say if I won some money on crypto or something like that, how could I then funnel the trust even more? Or that's through a different, that's through the what is it, IUF?
Yeah, through the IUL. You want to put it in the insurance policy. And based upon how we structure it, now this is maybe getting in the weeds a little bit, but how we structure it will determine in the first 7 years how much we can fund it. If we structure it the right way, we can maximize it. Okay. But there's other ways to navigate your funds. I'll use that term. Other ways to navigate your funds to make sure that every dollar does get into the IUL. However, you may not be able to do it in the same day.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I got that part. Okay. And then just one more for you with that, and then I want to ask Miss Christina a question. Okay. So I heard her mention something about with the policy. So let's say if money's there, meaning the people are insured, and it's $1 million or so, million plus or 2 million plus. Let's say if I have 2 more grandkids, then I'm going to repeat the same thing, like get more insurance and put it under the trust as well, or they'll already be born into, meaning they'll already be under the trust. Like I'll just have to add them because I have it set up that way.
So that's kind of a Christina and Mondo answer. So if you want to insure the new children, then that's obviously 2 separate policies. Now, how they are in the trust, that's something that Christina will answer, because I believe, Christina, they would have to be not a trustee. The insurance policy will be on the children, and you have to put that in and taken out by the trust. So they're not by default added in. So you would have to take out individual policies on each child. Yes.
Okay. Now, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Now, Miss Christina, I have 2 questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
The first one, I do, have a home and stuff, and I've been trying to get it into a trust because I pay extremely high taxes every year. I mean, really high. So, with that, I wanted to know, you said different trusts, revocable, irrevocable, and all those things. Now, a common trust or a pure trust, was those one of the ones that you mentioned? Because I know at some point you had got cut off, so you kept going, but I don't know what you said in the midst of that piece. I know you mentioned something about IRS, EIN, but is this the one where that's the new unique number that they give you? I don't know if it's a 9-digit or it's start with a C for the IRS, where you have to keep minutes and so forth, but you don't have to pay taxes or contact them like you said.
Yes. So the type of trust that you're referring to is the 508c1a trust. So that one is where where you are tax exempt. So you don't have to file federal taxes. You do need to continue to do your board meetings, but you don't have to report them. So like with a regular nonprofit, you have to report your board meetings and your financials. But with a 508c1a, you don't have to do that, which is one of the beautiful things. Okay, so it's totally exempt from that. Okay, so you don't have to pay federal taxes, you don't have to pay state taxes, sales taxes, or property taxes. So I understand that you have high property taxes. So in order to alleviate that, what you want to do is you want to set up the 508c1a and you want to transfer that home into the ministry trust or the 508c1a trust, so that once that trust is deeded once that home is deeded over to the trust, then you'll go down to the county and let them know that it's a nonprofit, tax exempt, and that you're exempt from paying property taxes. You do have to do an application, and then they'll approve you for to be exempt from paying property taxes. So that's how you're going to be able to resolve that particular issue.
Okay, so the 508c1a is a nonprofit, or is that? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. It's a nonprofit. It's tax exempt. The other names for it is faith-based organization or ministry. So there is a separation between church and state. And so that's why this type of trust entity is in existence, so that there is that true separation. Okay, so the government is not directly dealing with the entities, so the entities get to govern themselves. Okay, that is the true separation, and it has to exist. Okay, and so that's why we if we use this type of tool, we get these benefits.
Okay, and just one more, I'm sorry. Okay,
Yes,
so you said for the private trust, so I can put as many houses under that as I want, or should I make them separate? Let's say if I have a business already and I have, real estate under it, and then, under a LLC, and then put that LLC under a corporation, and then put the corporation under the trust to, have a lot of layers of protection. Would that work? Or should I just?
Yeah, you definitely want several layers of protection, but when it comes to, how many assets you have in an entity, you have to always think litigation, right? Because there's always going to be someone who wants to sue you. So if you have 10 houses in one trust and that trust gets sued, guess what? Then those 10 houses are up for grabs. So you have to also protect yourself. The best practice is for you to have one trust per house. Sometimes that structure can get a little complex, especially if you have 100 houses. So it's up to you. Some people, they, want to do, 5 houses per trust. They want to do 1 house per trust, or they want to do all of their houses in one trust. If you're using the strategy of having the 508c1a for the benefits of not paying property taxes, then your property tax exemption only qualifies for one property, meaning that let's just say that you had 5 houses under your 508c1a, only one of them will be able to be eligible for property tax exemption. The other 4 you're going to pay property taxes on. So if you have those 5 houses, the best thing for you to do is to have 5 trusts so that you can get exempt from all exemptions on all 5 houses.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for asking that good question.
Yes.
All right, next we have Scott. Hi, Scott. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Nice to meet you.
Too. So when you were showing us like what a trust looked like, there was like a start date, like the date the trust was established.
Yeah.
And like since the year's already halfway over, like backdating, you know, January through June, would you still have to like pay taxes on that? Or would the trust backdate till the first of the year to like, well, okay, so I'm a 1099. And so I just didn't know like if the trust backdated to be able to be tax exempt at the start of the year, or if that would start, say, July 1st.
Yeah. So, so when with these type of entities, your calendar year can start whenever your establishment date is. So that's 1. 2, you can also backdate your establishment date too. So if you wanted to backdate it to January 1st, you can do that. The only issue that might happen is that your notarization date is going to be different from your establishment date, but those dates can be different. So even though you backdated to January 1st, you notarized it, you know, July 1st. So, so that is also okay. The only thing is that you are going to go by the establishment date and not the notarized date.
And then for the 3 different trusts, would you just need one EIN number to cover all 3 of those trusts, or would you need to get a different like EIN number per trust?
That's a very good question. So all 3 entities are separate entities and all of them will require separate EIN numbers. So you can't mix and mingle. So you're going to need 3 different EIN numbers, 3 different bank accounts, and you're going to have to operate all 3 of them differently.
Okay, so would I need to do like another business EIN number and then move the business I already have into that business trust?
So the business that you currently have, are you going to remove yourself as the owner and add the trust?
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't need a new EIN number in order to do that for the current business. So you're just going to need an EIN number for the new entity, which is the business trust.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome, Scott. Patricia, I see your hand up. You have a question?
Yes, I do. In the case of the insurance, this is kind of for both of you, because we got the grantor, and the grantor who is an elderly person. What is that age bracket that insurance policy falls under, or what is the breaking point? Where does it stop at?
So a lot of companies, it can vary as far as when you enter the entry point. So if you are to take out a policy, most companies will not write a policy above 80 years old, okay, on that individual as the insured. However, if you get into the policy under 80, 80 and under, you keep it for the rest of your life. It does not expire, okay? So it depends on the carrier and the product. Most companies will not insure beyond 80. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Miss Patricia. Reiko? Hi, Reiko. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes, it's Reiko.
I was thinking about you today.
Oh, that's great. My question is for Mr. Grimes. With the insurance, um, just just say someone had like a lump sum, like a six-figure lump sum, just say 100,000.
Mhm.
Are they able to dump all of that money into one insurance policy all at once? Or is it like spread out over time? Or is it like paid monthly or quarterly? How would someone go about starting their policy with like a lump sum?
Yeah, so the simple answer is yes. You can start an IUL with a lump sum. The answer is yes. Okay. Um, there are different strategies that we would show you on, submitting a lump sum with the initial contract. You're starting your policy. You agree on the monthly premium, and you want to put 100 grand in there. Okay, and we'll show you how that affects your cash value. We'll show you what the interest rate's going to be, the index that you're going to follow. We will also show you strategies on how you could start your policy with the premium you select, monthly premium, annual premium, and monthly that you select. And if you were to take that lump sum and divvy it up over 12, 24 months as a part of your premium, there's a couple of different strategies that we will be able to show you visually on an illustration on the benefits of either one. And then you will be able to pick, okay, you know what? I like this one. I'm gonna give 100 grand right up front, or I'm going to divvy it up. And some of that has to do with the policy that you determine to take out. So if you're looking at putting 100 grand in on a, $2 million plus policy, most likely the way the standards are, you will be able to put the whole thing in. If you're getting a policy for $200,000, you will not be able to put $100,000 in. Okay, because of it's called the MEC. There's a limit. Okay, so we will show you all that visually. I don't want to get too in the weeds on it to confuse anyone right now, but to answer your question, I hope that does. But yes, you can put a lump sum in, and there's a couple different strategies on how to go about it.
Okay, yes, you answered that. Thank you.
Okay.
Now once you put that lump sum in, would that be your premium every year after that?
No,
Or
ma'am.
is it still
No, ma'am.
depend on the design? Okay,
No,
okay, I
ma'am.
get it.
So there's two things. So there's your monthly premium you determine. Then, we look at the plan, you determine, I want to pay this monthly / annually. Okay. The lump sum is just one lump sum, just one. That's it. Once you do it, you don't do it monthly, you don't do it annually, you don't do it, you know what I mean? It's done. And it's boosting your cash value, which is gaining a high yield with the index.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Reiko. Hi, Miss
Thank you,
Lakeisha, how are you?
Hi, Christina. Hi, everyone. Tonight has been really awesome. Great information from you and Mondo. I have two questions for Mondo's, and then I have a question for you, Christina.
Okay.
Really quick. Mondo, so, the main topic is, what I heard was about medical, getting, making sure that you're insurable.
Mhm.
And if it's $1 million or more, you have to get the examination done.
Mhm.
But can you say get two policies of $500,000 each on yourself, which eliminates you being able having to get a medical examination done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that takes care of that. The second question for you is, when Christina was talking about, for the example, the child 18 want to purchase a car, they want to pull out $30,000 from the insurance policy.
Mhm.
How long do you have to have that insurance policy before you can be able to pull out that money? So let's just say you just started it a month ago, 30 days or less, and the child's turned 18, you want to purchase them that graduation car. How long do you have to have that policy? Because some of it, you have to have it a certain amount of time before you can borrow off of it.
Correct. The policies that we structure, you can pull it out the next month.
Okay, so within 30 days.
Yeah. However, the catch is what's the size of your policy? If you have a smaller policy, there's not going to be 30 grand sitting in there. You know what I mean? So, because it has to accumulate value over time. Now, if you put a lump sum in and you have a very, very healthy premium, and you're doing infinite banking by paying yourself first, right? There's a great possibility you could have that 30 grand sitting in there, but it's not going to accumulate. Well, I'm going to say not. Most policies, very large policies, will accumulate cash value of 30 grand in 30 days. You get what I mean? You got to have a very large policy to to get that extremely large. And we actually don't even see that. So you can pull money out immediately within 30 days, but you would have to put a lump sum in and have a substantial policy to be able to pull out 30 grand, within a matter of, 60 days or so.
Okay, that answered my questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christina, the question for you is, I want to talk about the asset protection.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of it, what I learned is I purchased a franchise. And in that franchise, I read their disclosure documents. And a lot of what you talked about is in their disclosure documents because they are in a trust, but nothing says trust. It says a lot of holdings. I saw it, and they hold a lot of different companies is what I saw. But what I normally saw was they have a lot of offshore assets. How is that the same? So what I learned, I looked that up, and that's where the state or whatever state that you're in cannot veil, I think that's the word that you use, or pierce the veil of that asset, because of the offset asset, they can't touch it. They have no jurisdiction. So a lot of these people put it in the offshore. So does your program also teach you how to put things maybe in an offset, offshore, put your assets in an offset protection, offshore protection, if I'm saying that right?
So when you're saying offshore, do you mean like account or like an offshore like bank account, or
Yes, an offshore bank account.
Okay, yeah. So the program doesn't go over anything internationally. Everything that the program goes over is here in the United States. But I am working to eventually provide you guys with a foreign trust. So if you're in the program is always going to be updated. You have lifetime access to it. So eventually, sometime, I would say probably in the next 2 to 3 months, I'm going to make available a foreign trust. And in the foreign trust, you are able to get offshore things. Okay, so that's offshore assets and accounts. But with that foreign entity, it's going to be, established outside of the United States. So eventually, yes, it is going to be coming, because I'm in a space where I always want to be improving the program. And so once I'm learning and implementing these things, I'm going to share with you guys. So I am in the process where I'm going to be investing in Africa, particularly in a property in Ghana. And so I'm setting up a foreign trust and acquiring foreign assets. And so once I go through that process, I'm going to share that entire thing with you. So everything that's inside of the program is everything that I've been doing myself. Okay. So with the infinite banking, I have 5 policies. With the trust, I have 6 trusts. With the real estate, I've been doing real estate since 2015. So I am actively doing all of these things, actively building wealth, and actively sharing it with you guys. So now I'm in the process of doing what you are describing, and I'm going to make it available to you guys because I'm sharing everything.
Okay, and my last question, and then I'll allow, get somebody else the time.
Yes.
Do you need, as a trustee, because in the irrevocable trust, you want to be the trustee so you can be able to control everything. Is there a requirement to be a trustee license certification for that, or no?
No, there isn't. So a trustee can be an entity, or a trustee could be a natural person, but you do not have to be licensed. So there are, there are companies that offer to be your trustee, and usually those companies are like licensed individuals, and they are like fiduciaries. So for example, Fidelity is a brokerage, and they offer the service of being your trustee for your trust. And so those individuals that are acting as fiduciaries, they are usually like financial advisors, and they're licensed, but you don't have to be licensed to be the trustee of your trust.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I see a question in the chat. It says, can there be more than one trustee? Yes. So you can have what we call a founder trustee. A founder trustee is the individual that actually was appointed and established the trust, and then they can appoint co-trustees. So you can have an unlimited amount of trustees, an unlimited amount of grantors, and an unlimited amount of beneficiaries. So that was a good question. Ms. Flanzy, is that you? You have a question? Could not hear you.
Yes, I had to unmute.
How
How
are
are
you?
I'm good. Mondo, is there a minimum amount to fund the policy?
No. No. So other than your agreed premium, right? So, I mean, that's what will trigger the policy to active. So if you select a plan, an IUL, and say you want to pay $300 a month, whatever, just pick a number, or 500, whatever, doesn't matter. That is all that's required to activate the policy, is the initial premium. Some individuals will pay annually. It's your choice. You can pay either way, but that's what ignites the policy. There is no other requirement other than that.
Okay. And Christina, at the beginning of the slides, it kind of alludes to the fact that the grantor is the creator of the trust. How can you explain why it says that? Because I've also been reading the complete book of trusts, and a lot of it has the grantor is the creator of the trust.
Yeah, so the grantor is the individual who is establishing the trust. So the trust is created, and is created by an individual or an entity. So the grantor doesn't have to be like a human person. It could be an LLC, or it can be another trust. But the grantor on paper, on the contract, is the person or individual or entity that is actually establishing the trust. So that's why they're labeled as the creator.
But for the irrevocable, if the grantor has to be a different individual.
A different individual from the trustee?
Correct.
That is correct. Yes. So the grantor cannot serve in any other positions within the trust. So they can only serve as the grantor or the creator. The trustee cannot be the grantor, and vice versa. And the trustee cannot be the grantor cannot be the trustee, and the grantor cannot be in the beneficiary position. So they can only be the grantor.
So that's why you suggest that we shouldn't put our name as a grantor, but as a trustee. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's correct. You do
I
not,
see.
you don't want to be the grantor of your trust. So you can appoint someone else, because the grantor has no power, no control. So you don't want that position if you intend on being active in your trust and actually working it and building wealth for it. So you want to appoint someone else to have no power and no control.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Flanzy. Thank you for asking that good question. Jimmy Bill, I see your hand is up. How are you?
Sorry, hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. It's actually the third, but it's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good, you're good. So if you covered any of this, forgive me. My wife tells me sometimes that I'm not a good listener. I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention to her, but anyway, so what are the other family trust, or like the family trust and the business trust? What type of trusts are those? Are they the same as the faith-based trust, or are they like what are they exactly?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. So all three of the trusts are irrevocable trusts. All of them are private trusts, they're common law trusts, they're complex trusts, they are non-statutory trusts. So all three of them are that, right? But the difference is how you operate the trust, okay, and the verbiage inside of the trust. So for the business trust, it has a lot of business lingo, right? So one thing that's very unique with trust versus other entities is the purpose and intent. So the purpose and intent for the business trust is to hold other entities or other entities. So that's the main purpose of the business trust. So there's a lot of similarities in the language with the business trust compared to the private family trust, but the private family trust doesn't have the business lingo in it. So that's why there's a difference in like pages, because there's a difference in provisions. So for example, the business trust is 47 pages and the private family trust is 25 pages. Why? Because you need more provisions inside of the business trust because you're out here conducting business, you're engaging in commerce, you're dealing with clients and customers, and you're more likely to get sued. So there's more verbiage in there protection wise than the family trust. The family trust, you want to keep it completely private, so you don't want it out here in the public doing business, but it is a common law trust. It is what we call like a pure trust, or a non-statutory trust. It's all of those things, but it doesn't have the business lingo in it because you're not going to be conducting business with it. So it's more condensed to the meats and potatoes and what you really need for an entity where you're primarily only going to be holding assets like your insurance policies and some houses and stuff.
Gotcha. So I have a house. Would I want to put that into the faith-based trust or the private family trust?
So it depends on your strategy. Everyone is different. So if you would like to take advantage of the tax exempt exemption of the faith-based organization, then you're going to put it in the faith-based organization. If that, doesn't, matter to you or make a difference, then primarily you want to put it into the private family trust, because the faith-based organization is for any philanthropic endeavors. And so sometimes with that organization, you are going to be out here, dealing with the community, right? If you're helping, if you're helping the homeless population, or if you're, providing shelter or education or anything like that. And so with that type of trust, you really want to keep it for philanthropic things. You want to keep it for charities and stuff like that. So it's up to you. It's up to you which direction you want to do. If you don't plan on operating the faith-based like a ministry or like a church or anything like that, then it's totally okay for you to put your house in there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like my kids are charity cases, so yeah, that would make sense to put it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. And then Mondo, I just had a quick question for you. So I have 5 kids, so if I take an insurance policy out on all of them, like what are the monthly payments like for myself and then my 5 kids? Like, I know it varies, you said, but what would be like a general?
So yeah, that definitely varies. Now, one, your premium being older, not trying to age you, buddy, but you being older, yours is going to be more expensive.
Okay.
Being men and being older, it definitely increases the premium. So for you, and that's something we would have to do an illustration to figure out, number one, what are the goals, right? There's a few variables we need to look into. Look at number one, okay, what are you willing to invest into these IULs to do infinite banking and put it into your trust? So everyone has a different investment point, right? So we will have to look at some of your finances and look at, that's going to determine how much coverage you can receive, which will determine, the index that we consider, as well as the return you get from that index. So there's quite a few questions I will need to ask you to determine the price point.
Gotcha. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, buddy.
Thank you, Jimmy, for asking that good question. There's another question in the chat. It says, are there any capital gains tax on dividends on interest earned for the investments? So for example, if you have like stocks that are owned by the trust, or let's just say that you have a brokerage account for your crypto and your brokerage account is owned by the trust, then whatever capital gains that you are earning from those crypto, from that cryptocurrency, it goes into the trust. But as long as you let it sit inside of the trust, it doesn't trigger a taxable event. And if you need that money, you just go ahead and issue yourself a loan from the money that you receive from the capital gains. Let me see, which trust would you put the insurance policy into? So you would put it into the private family trust. That's the policy that you would, that's the trust that will own the insurance policy. Sid says, why not just invest in a money market so you don't have to borrow? So I personally have a money market, but that's preference. So everyone's investment style is different, if they want to or if they don't. I personally have a money market account with Truist Bank and I get 4% a year. The next question is, Karen, the point is to create the cash value. Okay, thank you, Karen. Lakeisha says, is this the same if the beneficiary wants to purchase a home as well? Yes, it's the same. So, so the beneficiaries, they get to borrow from the trust whenever they want, but their loan needs to be approved by the trustee. Okay, so it's not like they're willy-nilly, oh, let me get $250,000 to buy a house. The trustee has to approve that loan, but the trustee is the individual who's operating the trust. So they have to pull out the funds from the insurance policy to issue the beneficiary a check so that they're able to purchase their first house. So that is extremely powerful. Let's see, there's another question here. Does the HOA need notification that the property is under an irrevocable trust? So it's optional. It's up to you if you want to notify them, but and I'm not going to say it's optional because it depends on your HOA. So you really have to go to your bylaws of your HOA to see what they say on there, or just, notify your board and ask them. So I can't say yes or no because every HOA is different. No HOAs are the same. And it's up to you. Let's see, how long have you been in business, Mondo? Somebody asked that.
Okay, I didn't see that. I've been in business going on 10 years.
Okay, next question is, I think they asked the question, if I won the lotto for $1 million, can I have my first trust as the winner of the lotto ticket non-taxed? So it depends on the lotto, right? I don't know if a trust entity can actually win the lotto. So it depends on the state, and it depends on their rules and regulations for you actually playing that ticket, because I'm thinking to myself, that you have to actually be an individual and a natural person in order to, one, play the lotto, but two, win the lotto. So that's a tricky question. Let's see, next question. Mondo, do you have a Calendly link? A Calendly link? So
it is a tongue twister, yes. Yes, it's actually on my website. You can schedule an appointment there.
yeah. So he put his website on there. It's AMG associates.com. Can you email me? I would like a consultation to get my trust started. It will be nice to take advantage of the discount you offered. All right, Julius. So we will send you an email. Hold on. Next question also. Can Mondo give examples of a person that may be uninsurable? Oh,
Yeah.
you put in the chat already, right?
Yeah, terminal illnesses, chronic, critical, Alzheimer's. It depends on the product. And some of the carriers have different underwriting standards, but for the most part, heart disease, if you have congestive heart failure, that's uninsurable. If you've had, if you're on dialysis, that's uninsurable, things like that.
All right, perfect. Next question is, how can you set up a foreign trust without having a foreign legit address? I don't know how you can set up a foreign trust without having a foreign address. So you need a foreign address, okay? So, I mean, you can use, if you have families that's overseas, if you're buying property that's overseas, you can use those addresses. So you have to be creative, okay? Like I have family in that's outside of the United States, so I can just use their address. Being a mindset shift, can you expound on when using IUL, the meaning of paying yourself first? So the whole point of paying yourself first is that we usually pay ourselves last. So we always pay our bills first and we never pay ourselves first. So we are now going to do the opposite. Okay. So instead of you paying your bills, you're going to deposit that money into your IUL policy. And that's you paying yourself first, because that money is going to be earning interest because it's going to be tied to the index. And then with that being said, the insurance company, you're going to borrow those funds back out to now be able to pay your bills. Okay. So with that entire concept, you did pay yourself first because you didn't pay your bills first. You paid you first because that money is sitting inside of your policy. So it is a mindset shift. It is a lifestyle shift. It is something that that you are going to have to learn. And so this whole entire thing of you actually operating as a trustee is different. It's not what you're used to. And so you have to be trained. You have to learn how to operate as a trustee, and you have to unlearn what you've been knowing all these years, which is, let me get my paycheck and pay myself, pay all of my bills, and then whatever's left over, I'll survive on until the next paycheck. So now you have to cut all that out if you're intentional about building wealth, and you have to pay yourself first by taking out the policies and paying the policy first before you pay your bills. Thank you, Reiko. And then the last one, do you have to list the lenders that will finance an irrevocable trust for real estate transactions? Yes, I have. Yes, I do. I have a list of banks. So just send me an email. You have my contact information. So we are all done. Thank you so much, guys, for being on this webinar tonight. Thank you so much for asking those good questions. And if you guys have any other further questions, Mondo's information is in the chat. My information is also in the chat. So we look forward to hearing from you, and definitely take advantage of the 50% off for the course and the 20% off for the done for you. I do have a class coming up next week. So I'm going to be running the class Monday through Friday on Zoom, and it's going to be from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and you're going to be setting up your business trust, private family trust, and the tax exempt trust. We're going to get your EIN numbers, your board meetings, and start transferring some assets. So if you're intentional about it, you want to take advantage of the 20% off, because it is going to go away in the next couple hours, and you could be setting up your trust as early as Monday. Okay, so you guys have a good night. And if you have any other questions, you can text the number that you received the Zoom link. Okay. Do you need to establish it? Wait, what's the question? Can you briefly explain the best way to establish an LLC in your name, all caps? Do you need to establish the trust first? If you want the trust to own the LLC that's in your all caps, you need to establish the trust first. But Letitia, please send me an email. We can talk about that offline. So you guys be blessed. Have an amazing evening, and thank you guys for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
Thank you.